This is an overview of my talk, and as an introduction, I want first to give you some general background about, to help you understand our community, our situation regarding English and also the other languages. I am going to talk about primary, secondary and high school education and what has been done and what is the situation now from my point of view. The Basque Country is a bilingual community. And Basque and Spanish are official languages. Basque was for a long time in a process of losing speakers, so a big effort had to be made to recover the language at the schools. As a result, and according to data released by the Department of Education, the number of speakers who are bilingual between 16 and 20 years old has doubled in the last 20 years. And what about English? The Basque government has been very concerned with achieving the objective that the students finish the obligatory education with Basque and Spanish dominating. Parents too, of course, but parents have also been worried about English. So, in reality, parents who could afford have been sending their sons and daughters to English-speaking countries in summer and to private lessons after school. Due to this parental pressure and to the European policies, and I want to mention the White Paper on Education and Learning in 1995, which said that European citizens should be proficient, functionally proficient, in their mother tongue and in other two European languages. The Basque government started implementing the plurilingual experience and different projects. In 1996, the plurilingual experience started, and three different models were proposed to schools. The first one was to introduce the English language to 4 or 5 years old. At that time they started at 8. The second one was to extend the schedule of teaching English in 2 hours per week in primary, and the third one the same but in secondary education. One of the targets of this experience was to analyze which model was the best and then implement it in the rest of the schools. But what happened? The majority of the schools applied for the first model. The early introduction to English was so successful that many schools, pressured by parents or because of the need to increase registrations, started to offer it on their own before it was possible to evaluate it. And after that, teacher training was prepared to train all these teachers and all that. I must say that the early introduction to English produced quite a lot of criticism among some groups of professionals worried about the fact that it could interfere with Basque acquisition. Afterwards, research carried out by Jasone Zenov from the Basque University demonstrated that these short sessions to which the 4 or 5 years old were exposed didn't affect to Basque language acquisition. However, there was no clear advantage either for the learning of English itself, because it seemed that in informal context, formal school context, older children could learn faster than the youngest ones. Even in terms of phonetics, which was the strongest point to start earlier, there wasn't a clear advantage, probably because the models' teachers were not native speakers of the language. However, this program goes on. To give a continuation to the early introduction of English, another two projects were proposed, one for primary and another one for secondary. And they were based in teaching content through the language, through English. Putting the focus on the content instead of on the language, it was supposed that the students would learn content and language. For these projects, there wasn't a clear evaluation, and anyway, they finished in 2006 when all teacher trainers finished preparing materials and piloting them and explaining to teachers how to implement in the classrooms and all that. While this was going on, another multilingual experience started. And it consisted in teaching the subjects at the school in three languages: Basque, English, and Spanish, Basque, English, or French. And also, English and French were taught as foreign languages. This experience seems, according to data released by the Institution of Research and Evaluation of the Basque Country, the results were good compared to schools which didn't have this project. Students were volunteers to enter this project. They had to pass an exam to demonstrate proficiency in the language, and it seemed that they were people who were motivated students, ready to make an effort and conscious of the advantages of learning languages. And the last experience started in 2010, and it is the trilingual model. The trilingual model means using Basque, Spanish, and English at school. The three languages are given an equal proportion of time, and students are not tested to enter this project. The purpose of the government is to pilot this project for 3 years before extending it to all the schools. At this time, there are 118 schools which are running this project in the Basque Country. Difficult task, because you need to have English teachers. You need to have teachers ready to teach in English, and money to organize extracurricular activities, immersion activities for learners. But this is what it is. And what about autonomous learning? Why? Well, I would like to say that I've been a teacher for more than 20 years here. I've worked in different schools, different levels. I've been a teacher trainer for several years. And nowadays I am a teacher at secondary education, and from my point of view, few people care about autonomous learning. And why? Why is it so difficult to know about it and to implement it or to develop it? I think there could be different factors. I think the concern in the education department, up to now at least, seems to have been more centered in the what, the content, the schedule of time, the time dedicated to English, rather than in the how or the why. In addition, the teacher training involved in the programs, and I mentioned before there was a big movement of teacher trainers and programs and all that, were more concerned with preparing the materials to give to teachers to implement them in the classrooms, rather than in training teachers to be autonomous or training teachers to help students be autonomous, independent, creative. Teachers or students were not asked, what do you want to find out about, how do you want to do it, who is going to do what and when, and so on. In fact, there was a big movement, but in terms of autonomous learning, from my humble point of view, it was a missed opportunity. And maybe it was because it was too early, I don't know. But adding difficulties and all that, what about our teachers' culture regarding teaching? I really think that this is very difficult to change. And of course there are innovations in the Basque Country, more in primary and in vocational than in secondary or high school education, I think. But to change our minds, autonomous learning asks for a change in our minds is difficult, A lot of time is needed and a lot of effort is needed for reflection, for evaluation. Many teachers feel pressured by longer hours of work, large groups of students actually becoming larger, bureaucracy, meetings, parents, and so on. It is difficult even to free yourself from the textbook, which is considered as a time saver. Textbooks have an important role in the Basque Country, and from my experience, I would say that following a textbook is very, very difficult to develop learner autonomy. However, our curriculum at this moment is based on competencies, and the word autonomy appears everywhere. But few teachers strictly follow the curriculum. Most of the teachers follow the textbooks. And there is a widespread opinion that the good teacher is the one who finishes all the units in the book. To support this idea, I will tell you that some months ago, salesmen from different publishers came to a school to offer us the last brand new brand textbooks. And all of them emphasizes the idea that if you bought their book, you would be provided with everything. You wouldn't need to look for anything outside the book. You would be given the mainstream lesson, the lesson for the slowest students, the lessons for the fastest students, exams, keywords, all in a pack. Even I thought, one day we will be given the marks of our students too. And when you listen to them and you are in the group and I have learned to survive. I'm not going to ask things like, where is searching for? Where is autonomy, creativity, curiosity, or decision making? No, things like that. I have been trying to implement autonomous learning for more than 7 years now. About 7 years now in the classroom, in the practice, I mean. Whenever I've asked my students to choose a topic for a project, they have hardly ever chosen topics from the textbooks. The topics my students are interested in are sexual relationships, contraception methods, anorexia, bulimia, hackers, cyberbullying, self-esteem, interesting, surfing boards. I've had students doing real research about surfing boards because that is what they do when they leave school, and reading difficult things about which were the best surfing boards, discovering, searching that. And when covering more academic content, they like things like Impressionism, and Van Gogh is a favorite, by the way, and they like genetics, but not the typical text about genetics of a textbook, no. They look for difficult things about genetics, things like how viruses are transmitted through genetics and things like that, because maybe some of them want to be doctors or, you know. And why not? Because if the curriculum itself says that the students should deal with the topics that they are interested in, why not? And to go on and to return to the difficulties about implementing autonomous learning, there is a general idea in secondary and high school education that classes should be silent. If people move, speak, teachers may think that they are wasting their time. And school is not about having fun, you know. Teachers usually prefer silent and obedient students who speak when they are asked to do so. However, in the autonomous classroom, at least this is what happens to me, people move, talk, go to the corridor, go for an interview, to record a video, you know, and we are noisy people. We are noisy people. you have to cope with that. And what about the students' opinions and culture? There are some students at the age of 16, 17 who are good students, academically good students, with the ones who have good marks and all that, who they don't need to be responsible for their learning because their marks have been good always, so why should I decide what? Nothing. And last year, a student asked me, Carmen, when are we going to have a normal English lesson? And I replied, what is a normal English lesson? And she said, a normal English lesson is when you go there in front of the blackboard and you explain the present perfect and we do exercises. And I said, okay, I think about it. However, why do we need to implement learner autonomy in the Basque Country? I believe that we need to implement autonomous learning because autonomous learning means empowering the real protagonists of the story of learning, teachers and students. I also believe that the students and also teachers would be more motivated. And I just want to show you what the European Commission said about motivation. Motivation to learn languages is a priority. Increasing motivation should be the first objective at the school. And all the other. I also think that we need to develop autonomous learning because we need to cope with the diversity of our classrooms, in which we have students who go abroad in summer and speak quite a lot of English, others just do what they do at school and so on. And apart from that, the Basque government, the Department of Education, has the goal of achieving an inclusive school by 2015. And I'm going to show you some of the objectives of this inclusive school. So if you read a bit, well, I think it is clear that autonomous learning fits with the objectives of this new school, yes? And what about the future needs of our students? I came across a book, the title of the book was "Why do I need a teacher when I have Google?" Now there are books like this in the internet, on Amazon, by Jan Gilbert. The author of the book exposes the paradox of meeting the learning needs for the 21st century with the continuation of a factory model paradigm of schooling from the 19th and 20th centuries. He says that the role of the 21st century teacher is to help students to know where to find the knowledge, what to do with it, how to differentiate good and bad knowledge, apply it, help develop communication skills, creativity, curiosity, ability to work as a team, confidence, self-esteem, and all the things that computers can't yet do. And I wonder, how can you be this 21st century teacher without developing autonomous learning? All this. And just to finish, I want to show you the basic competencies that in our curriculum that our students should develop when they finish the obligatory education. And you can read them. And therefore, I think that to answer all these educational needs and curricular demands, we may contribute by developing autonomous learning, at least in the language classroom. That's all.